The German term Kulturkampf refers to power struggles between emerging constitutional and democratic nation-states and the Roman Catholic Church, over the place and role of religion in modern polity, usually in connection with secularization campaigns. In the ancient regime, states were confessional. Religion governed private and public life, and the Catholic Church had been closely associated with reactionary governments and ideological conservatism. Thus, the struggle against the ancient regime, its remnants, or its restoration was necessarily a struggle against the Church, and such conflicts were a central theme of Western European history from the mid-19th century until 1914. In the historical sense, Kulturkampf refers to such power struggles and legislative campaigns in several countries, e.g., in Switzerland, which took a leading role in the 1840s, in Germany beginning around 1860 and especially their culmination between 1871 and 1876. In France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Britain, Spain, Italy, Austria-Hungary, as well as in the United States and Latin America, g. Mexico or Brazil. Because of its intensity and anti-Polish aspect, the German Kulturkampf is most widely known. With this meaning, the term Kulturkampf entered many languages. G. French, Le Kulturkampf; Spanish, El Kulturkampf; Italian, Il Kulturkampf. It first appeared 1840 in an anonymous review of a publication by Swiss-German liberal Ludwig Snellon, The Importance of the Struggle of Liberal Catholic Switzerland with the Roman Curia, but it only gained wider currency after liberal member of the Prussian parliament, Rudolf Virchow, used it in 1873. In contemporary socio-political discussion, the term Kulturkampf is often used to describe any conflict between secular and religious authorities or deeply opposing values, beliefs between sizable factions within a nation, community, or other group. Background: under the influence of ascending new philosophies and ideologies such as the Enlightenment, humanism, realism, positivism, materialism, nationalism, secularism and liberalism, the role of religion in society and the relationship between society and church underwent profound changes in the 18th and 19th centuries. Many countries endeavored to strip the church of worldly powers, reduce the duties of the church to spiritual affairs by secularizing the public sphere and by separation of church and state, and to assert the supremacy of the state, especially in education. Rasheen Healy argues that across Europe, the Kulturkampf operated mainly on state level and was found, especially in strongholds of liberalism, anti-clericalism, and anti-Catholicism. In the 1850s and 1860s, there existed an extensive and entrenched current of anti-Jesuit paranoia, anti-Catholicism, anti-monasticism and anti-clericalism. The Catholic Church resisted this development, which it portrayed as an attack on religion, and sought to maintain and even strengthen its strong role in state and society. With the growing influence of Enlightenment, and after having lost much of its wealth, power and influence in the mediatization and secularization of the early 19th century, the Church had been in a state of decline. The Church strove to revert its waning influence and to keep sway in such matters as e.g., marriage, family and education, and initiated a Catholic revival by founding associations, papers, schools, social establishments or new orders, and encouraging religious practices such as pilgrimages, mass assemblies, the devotion of Virgin Mary or the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and the veneration of relics. The Pope himself became an object of devotion. Apart from the extraordinary proliferation of religious orders, the 19th century also witnessed the rise of countless Catholic associations and organizations, especially in Germany and in France. Catholic propaganda, including the interpretation of daily events, was spread through local and national Catholic newspapers prominent in all Western European nations, as well as through organized missions and groups dedicated to pious literature. In the years leading up to the Kulturkampf, under the leadership of Pope Pius IX, The Catholic Church promulgated a series of contentious dogmas and encyclicals. In 1854, it proclaimed Maria's Immaculate Conception. 1862, in the encyclical Mirari Vos, Pius IX condemned liberalism, free press and free thought. In 1864, the Vatican published the encyclical Quanta Cura and Syllabus of Errors. In 1869, the Pope forbade Catholics from participating in Republican elections in the Decree non expedit, and in 1870, the Vatican Council declared the dogma of papal infallibility. With its Syllabus of Errors of 1864, the Catholic Church launched an assault on the new ideologies, condemning 80 philosophical and political statements, mainly the foundations of the modern nation-state, as false. It outright rejected such concepts as freedom of religion, free thought, separation of church and state, civil marriage, sovereignty of the people, democracy, liberalism, socialism and reason as the sole base of human action, and in general, condemned the idea of conciliation with progress. The announcements included an index of forbidden books. A profound change was the gradual reorganization of the Catholic Church and its expansive use of the media. The popes worked to increase their control of the Church. Heavily criticized by European governments, it was centralized and streamlined with a strict hierarchy. The bishops sought direction from the Vatican, and the needs and views of the international church were given priority over the local ones. Opponents of the new hierarchical church organization pejoratively called it ultramontanism. In view of the Church's opposition to Enlightenment, liberal reforms and the revolutions of the 18th, 19th centuries, these dogmas and the Church's expressed insistence on papal primacy angered the liberal-minded all across Europe, even among some Catholics, adding fuel to the heated debates. The dogmas represented a threat to the secularized state, as they reaffirmed that the fundamental allegiance of Catholics was not to their nation-state, but to the Gospel and the Church, and that the Pope's teaching was absolutely authoritative and binding on all the faithful. Secular politicians even wondered whether Catholicism and allegiance to the modern liberal state were not mutually exclusive. British Prime Minister Gladstone wrote in 1874 that the teaching on papal infallibility compromised the allegiance of faithful English Catholics. For European liberalism, the dogmas were a declaration of war against the modern state, science and spiritual freedom. The Pope's handling of dissent of the dogmas, by excommunication of critics or demanding their removal from schools and universities, was considered as epitome of papal authoritarianism. In direct response to the Vatican's announcements, Austria passed the so-called May Laws for Cisleithania in 1868, restricting the Concordat of 1855, and then cancelled the Concordat altogether in 1870. Saxony and Bavaria withheld approval to publish the papal infallibility. Hesse and Baden even denied any legal validity. France refused to publish the doctrines altogether. Spain forbade publication of Syllabus of Errors in 1864.